And you probably want that one? Soccer.
Sure, yeah. Well, only on this, actually.
That's the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're all set to go.
All right, cool. All right, so while we wait another minute or so, if you could please go to soccerdiv.com on any internet device you have. If you don't have one, you can just partner up with whoever's next to you. You should be able to log in without having to actually, well, you should be able to join without actually having to make a login. And just go to Alba2471, and that will take you to this little space race that we're going to do as a kind of a setup. And then when you get into it, it will flash what color team you're on, and I need you to actually go find your teammates and sit with them. Fun stuff. I think I can officially get started now. So I'm Danielle, thanks for coming along. I'm assuming if you're here, you're interested in the quagmire that is participation points and the multiple perspectives on how participation points work. So I'm gonna move out of this for just a split second. So I say ruthless, getting honest, pure participation evaluations. Kind of in jest, because the ironic thing is the method I've been using to do peer participation evaluations actually ends up building teams. I feel like students end up becoming closer, even though once they figure out how the peer participation points work, they kind of realize like, oh, we can't give everyone a 100% because there's more at stake. So I'm Danielle Alba. I work here at CWI. I'm an adjunct instructor. I work with the biology and the agriculture departments. So before I forget, credit where credit is due. This is Dr. Donald P. French. He is at Oklahoma State University. This is actually something I learned from him when I was in grad school. He does it to like a whole nother level, which I don't think would ever fly, especially not here at CWI. But basically, he does this in his introductory biology labs, and he actually multiplies the peer participation evaluation by their entire grade. So if they have 100% in lab, but their peers grade them at 60% participation, they get a D in the course. So yeah, that's a little ruthless even for me. So I've kind of adopted it to a different way, but I just wanted to put credit there that this was his system originally, and I've just adapted it for my own use. So Soccerdiv, if you've never used Soccerdiv before, it's a like a interactive quiz kind of game. So if you could go to soccerdiv.com, and then you don't actually need to make a login, but you need to join Alba2471. It will flash on your screen a team color, and I need you to actually like get together in your teams by color. So there should be 4 teams, so we can have here, 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 and here, if that makes sense. So soccerdiv.com.
I'm blue.
Okay, we got a blue, a magenta, a lime, and a peach. Should we do blue in the back corner, magenta up here, lime back there, and peach right here? Find each other. Yeah, magenta right here. Find each other. Hopefully this doesn't take the whole 30 minutes or so we got. So work together to fill this out. You guys can work together, but if you want to punch it into your own devices, you can have your own devices. Yeah, you can miss
Agenda, let me join you.
Oh, got it. Thanks. Like making you guys participate. So Socrative is what I use on my syllabus day, the first day of class. I use this as an icebreaker with my students, and I'll set it up as a syllabus quiz. So they're working through their syllabus together to try to figure out their points. Since we don't have a syllabus for this course, I set it up with "Are you smarter than a fifth grader?" questions that I got off their website. So no pressure at all. I tried to eliminate questions that were kind of ambiguous. So yeah, work your way through the quiz. As you go, the rockets here, it works as, they call it a space race. And it's by accuracy, not by time. So it's not till the very end, when everyone gets to the end, that you find out who wins. Okay, so you're working as a team, but you're using multiple devices.
So everybody has to put it in.
Yeah, but you can work together to pick your answers.
Oh, we all put in an answer?
Yeah.
Unless you.
And you'll see the rockets move as you answer questions. Yeah, see?
Yeah, we're having login.
I think there's a correct answer in May. Try to avoid Googling things, because that makes it no fun. But definitely work with each other.
Good that people are saying.
It's awesome on syllabus day because all of a sudden you start hearing all your policies pop up. We need no late homework. You can just join with someone then. The big goal is just to put you guys in groups. Line, where's line? I think this is line, right? Right over there. You just go.
Sorry.
My fault. Yeah, the quiz itself is an average day. We'll try to finish up in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Fastest lecture ever.
That's what we might do.
Don't be Googling now. Don't be ruining all the fun.
Oh. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
You wrote in?
Yes. Yeah.
Same here. How about all of them wrong?
There we go. I'm cookies like that. That's how we
It tracks in your brain that you actually use in your day-to-day life. There's an unintended path in your brain.
It was right.
I took it off. How was your going to be there? We know it. I was like some English person. I'm like, I haven't used the word article.
Okay, same thing. I could be totally wrong.
All right, so like 2 minutes-ish. Actually, I'll teach you the actual thing of this thing. Yeah, okay, sure, whatever. See, with my classes, I make multiple choice. But I'm not gonna write
40 questions?
No, but there are 10 questions. So
We're getting it wrong.
Okay, it's not those ones. It's just me.
I want to be wrong.
We'll see how it goes then.
Oh, no, never reading.
Oh, I suppose.
So at 1:30, I'm going to shut down the quiz. So
In Dr. French's classes, do the students ever enter into an unholy alliance to grade each other really high so they can bring it?
well, that's the magic of this, is that it ends up being like a pie chart. So if everyone grades each other really high, they all end up with the same grade anyways. So it's ruthless. So.
Cooperation or?
Yeah, it actually, what I find is that it actually builds really strong teams. And they end up being like friends for the rest of the time they're in college. Yeah, which is ironic because you would think it would turn it into competition, but I think it just teaches them the idea that you're accountable to someone other than your instructor. You know, and so they become more aware of their classroom as an environment versus like them watching something.
So do most of them get high grades?
It ends up being like quite the dichotomy, like it becomes very divided, so either you do really well or you do really poorly. And what happens is as we do more evaluations over the semester, people get more honest, or so that gap more. So you end up with less variation and more grades.
One more minute?
You're blue?
We got close to the end.
Is everyone done? No. Yeah, okay. This is what I'm gonna save the minute then. All right, so our official winners is Team Blue. Everyone congratulate. Woo! Good job, Team Blue. Oh, I don't remember what this does. Get reports. I do this once a year, so. View chart. We don't need to do this, do we? It gave you the answer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm not gonna worry about giving you the answers.
Danielle, do you know, can you program multiple ways to have entered a correct answer?
Yeah, I just didn't want to spend
Fair,
like,
I just
yeah.
wanted to make sure
Yeah,
the school-
so when I do it with my course, I actually do like multiple choice. And yeah, but I was like, yeah, you guys can type in answers. Yeah, there's multiple ways to do it. Okay, so thank you for playing along in that. So why did I make you do that? So I do that every semester for my syllabus quiz at the beginning of syllabus day, because it makes it gets you guys in random groups, so I don't have to take any blame for who you got grouped with for the rest of the semester. And it's a good icebreaker for them. They really, because they're working on something together and there's a little bit of competition and a little bit of stress, they really get into it and they start building bonds with each other, which is great. So that's the first thing I do in my semester is socrative.com, have them do the syllabus quiz. And that way it reinforces what the major policies of the course are that might catch them off guard if they aren't reading very well. I think I talked most of that. Socrative is a lot of fun. So in general, I think most academics would agree that participation is good for multiple reasons. I have like 3 slides on why participation is good. Participation though can be hard to judge, especially with modern modalities of teaching, right? So face-to-face participation is one thing. Online participation and hybrid participation can all be different things, right? And then, I always think about, back when the Greeks, you just put your hand on your belly, you're like, yeah, you talked enough, right? So maybe you talk too much, right? So how do you actually evaluate that? And so that's kind of this is the technique I've adopted, and it actually really works. Saying that, if you're in this lecture, right, I'm assuming you're interested in participation points in one way or another. I know participation points itself is a debate, and I'm sure if I was sitting in the audience 4 years ago, I would have been like, right? And there's even a little extra credit involved in this whole scheme and methodology of how this works, which is another like, right? So adopt it as you wish. That's a whole different debate that isn't going to happen in this half hour, and there's lots of research on. But if you are interested in doing some kind of participation points in your courses, this is one way to go about actually keeping track without having to keep track of each individual student and what they are or aren't saying in each class, because who has time for that when you're trying to actually teach the content, right? So you have to adjust it to your instructor style and goals of the class. So I use this a lot, especially in my non-majors biology, because my goals in that class is just to introduce these students to science, because a lot of them have never even had a good science class, right? So my goals in non-majors isn't to cram this knowledge in their heads so they can get into a specific program and go be scientists in the world. It's just to make them realize that science is trustworthy and can be fun and can benefit you, right? So I really adjust this to goals of the class. So in my non-majors class, I make participation a really big part of the course, because that's going to really gauge how much they get out of a non-majors class. I also include it in my pre-nursing students, their A&P course, which is really a tough class, and it's kind of the last hard science class before they go into the more like nursing technical skills kind of thing. So participation is really important to that, because that's how they're actually going to remember the material. And there's a lot of material in A&P, and it's stuff that they're going to actually need to know, not only to get into the program and pass their tests, but hopefully not, kill someone one day, right? So it's goals of the class, right? So I adjust this to that. So participation is good. Why do we know participation is good? So it increases student interest and breaks up monotony, right? Everyone's seeing Charlie Brown, right? We're like, and it kind of sucks lecturing to yourself as an instructor too, right? So just having different voices chime in can kind of break your loss of focus, so to speak, and get you more engaged. Engage students to make connections and view questions differently. When you are actively interacting with your students, you can rephrase questions. They can ask questions that you wouldn't have even thought to that they would have had this question, right? And a lot of times students know what other students want to know, okay? I actually got in trouble this semester for having too much participation in one of my classes because we got way behind. But I was like, well, you're non-majors and you have these real life questions, so I might as well answer them. Well, you got the chance to have someone answer them for you, right? So great feedback to instructor on student comprehension. We've all had that where you're expecting this awesome feedback. So we just talked about it for 7 slides and it's like, right? And so it helps give you feedback on, do they get it? Are they quiet because they're being studious? Are they quiet because they're confused? Are they quiet because they're scared? Right? So it's a good way to gauge that. Great feedback to students on instructor expectations. Not only are you getting feedback on how much they're understanding, they're getting feedback on what level of comprehension you're expecting, right? So I do a lot of discussion questions in my classes, and that's really, my discussion questions are usually like half of my exams. Stuff that's not bullet pointed on the PowerPoint per se, right? Things that you actually have to participate and critically think out. I'm more interested in them being able to critically think and find solutions than to be able to memorize them, because we live in the age of Wikipedia and Google, right? Where it's not about what you know, it's what you know how to find out, right? So that's a lot of my exams, is the critical thinking. It encourages preparation for class. If students know that participation is being noticed, then they'll be more encouraged to be prepared for class and not walk in cold. Especially some students, you get a lot of, if a student has anxiety with participation, that can be a pushback sometimes with this. But if you're really encouraging them to build a community with each other, it's like you can be an extrovert. Like a lot of people are surprised when I tell them I'm an introvert, which I don't think is that rare in academia, but I'm like, be an extrovert to the best of your ability for the next hour and 15 minutes, right? And I will not let anyone make fun of you, right? So you're just building the sense of community. And part of that, I think, with the students with more anxiety about participation, they actually really push the preparation, makes them feel more comfortable in participation, which is great. It allows some control over balancing contribution. We've all had those classes where, I don't know any class that I haven't had where there's like 3 students that want to answer every question, and that's awesome because they're the ones that get you through the slides, because we need to finish the slides, right? But you don't know where everyone else is when you got the 3, what was her name? It's the girl from Harry Potter. Hermione's going, yeah, And so it kind of gives you an excuse to be like, well, thank you. I appreciate that, but we need someone else, right? So it gives you some control over that. And it builds dialogue, and this is one of my big things, hopefully support between students. I really tell them, like, I'm not asking you these questions for you to inform me. I'm asking you them because you guys are teaching each other, right? Like, I don't need you guys to teach me this content. I need you guys to help teach each other this content. And I'm just here to kind of help that along, right? Which is like, what? To a lot of them, right? But being able to get really close with their group mates and kind of feel not just familiar and comfortable with them, but actual like a responsibility for their group mates is a whole different game, right? They come more prepared because they feel like they're responsible to their group mates. And then the groups become responsible to each other because the groups start feeding off each other. So it's great. I get a lot of students that build really strong friendships using this method, and then they end up supporting each other for the rest of their tenure here at CWR, which is awesome. Developing speaking skills and confidence, English, right? So participation makes you practice your use of words, right? It makes you practice self-advocacy. It makes you practice using the terminology of your field. So it's one thing to watch something, it's another thing to use it, right? And so you're really pushing that use it or lose it, mentality when you really push participation. Practice of terminology and language and discipline, which is super important. The more you use the terminology, the easier it's going to be to know what it is and be comfortable using it. And then it can really help move the class along, right? If students are motivated to participate, then you can actually keep going, right, through the slides, and you don't get in these like doldrums of, let's try this one again, right? So I pulled most of this off this website right here, so I threw that up there. Because when someone asks you, why is participation good, you're like, why would it be, right? But it's another thing to make a list of why it is good. So, time to participate. Think, fair, share. This is one of my favorite ways to have students participate, one of the ones I get the most positive feedback from. In your group, share how you view participation in your classrooms. Do you see any benefits to motivating student participation? Motivating being the key word there, right? Do you actively say, let's find a way to get these guys to participate, right? And do you see benefits of that? Do you see differences between students who do and don't participate? And do you focus more on participation in some courses than others? Ready, go!
I'm surprised that he's able to get away with having so heavily.
Tenure brings in a lot of money. No one argues with him.
So I chose to figure out a way so that group work will only help their grade never first.
Yeah.
So if you have individual grade and group grade, and that group grade will only help their grade.
All right, I'm gonna stop you there. So let's do 3 answers from 3 different teams. So Team Magenta, can you answer one of these? Anyone from your team?
Yeah, I was just talking about. So I try to promote as much participation in my groups as possible, just because I want to my class feeds of the students' experience and kind of like realize that they're not alone in the situation. So hopefully try to rely on that kind of teamwork.
Yeah. So the camaraderie, kind of, brothers in battle kind of thing, right? Okay, so back there. How about, do you see any differences between those who do and don't participate? We really expect
But sometimes I think we have to be careful because some students are introverts and they're not always in small group discussions. Maybe they participate a little bit differently than they would in whole group discussions, or again, they're contributing in different ways. But oftentimes, and then there's also the flip side of students who speak out a lot but aren't actually kind of deeply learning. So it's a mixed bag, but I think
it's definitely not a dichotomy, but what I find is that total kind of learning over the semester, right? The more you participate, the more you're engaged, the more you're gonna learn from your beginning to your end, right? Yeah.
I think it's also how you present that discussion, because we may talk about the discussions within the classroom, but when I was in the classroom, which I'm only online now, but I think when you divide them up in groups and encourage that discussion, they actually have the questions there, and they begin to gravitate with people
Mhm.
who they feel comfortable with. I think that's when a lot of the discussion and being comfortable with their peers on a smaller basis. So I think that you need to offer them different opportunities in pairs,
Mhm.
in groups, and as the classroom, because I think that the person that sits here, you'll see as they develop within their groups and that it really encourages them to communicate, to speak more freely.
Okay, and real quick, do you focus more on participation in some courses than others? Any of you guys on this side of the room?
Oh, we're online as well,
Yeah.
so it's a little different, with the discussion board, there's some required element of participation, so we're just trying to say, how do you get that participation beyond the participation that's expected?
Yeah.
A response to response, or
Yeah.
something that, especially too, depending on how you're grading and scoring when it's not a lot, and they don't have a lot of time, so.
Yeah.
um,
It's hard.
Yeah, so I think it doesn't really answer that question, but that's what we were discussing.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep going because we got 5 minutes and that's not gonna happen. Okay, so encouraging participation. So there's several different techniques out there. My least favorite is cold calls. I'm never okay really with cold calling a student because sometimes if they're not answering, it's because something other than this class is going on in their life. But some people are really into cold calls. Clicker technology or any technology in general, discussion boards, whatever, that's all evolving with it. A lot of students like clicker technology because they can participate without having to put themselves out there, so to speak. But then there's issues with that too, because you end up with financial limitations. I remember when I had a clicker in college, like 10 or 15 years ago, it was still like $110 just for the clicker, which might fly at like a 4-year university, but at a community college, maybe not, so there's issues with that. Required graded participation, but then how do you actually do the logistics of keeping track of that and making them useful numbers? So other ideas are out there as well. So difficulties with classroom participation, misalignment of instructor and student expectations and preferences, right? The instructor might have one preference on how we participate and the students might have another, right? If you talk to me as a student, I would have been the student in the back, closest to the hall, to the aisle, to the door, right? Pretty quiet. Where in my head, I was going nonstop, right? Versus now it's like, talk. Like I literally say to my students, like, I need a verbal confirmation of what I just said, So what students are walking into expecting and what teachers are walking into expecting can misalign sometimes. Miscommunication of the intention of the instructor. Instructors, whenever you're in front of a group of students, you have to be careful about how you put yourself out there. I always tell my students, I have major RBF, I believe is the initial. I explain it to them. I look angry a lot when I'm not angry, right? So I'm hyper aware of that. But yeah, definitely students, I think sometimes can feel like, oh, you're picking on me versus you're trying to get me engaged, right? And you see that, I feel like I get that a lot more with freshmen where they get that kind of mentality versus later on when they're like, yeah, you can't stop me from talking, right? Inclusivity of students of different backgrounds, histories, etc., right? Especially at some place like CWI, that's community college, we get such a gamut of students, right? From here to here, right? And so you don't know these things walking up to your students the first day. And so you can't, why they're acting the way they are, whether it's participating or not, really has a lot to do with their previous experiences that you had nothing to do with, but you have to deal with now, right? And figure out a way to work with them that. Difficulty in evaluation, right? Whether for a grade or not, which is a debatable issue, right? A lot of people think, well, if you're signed up for the class, you're signed up to participate, and that's just a minimum requirement, right? Versus, but as far as total learning for the student, does grading participation actually increase their learning? Probably, right? So kind of dealing with those own, debates that instructors, I think, have to deal with all the time internally, right? Flexibility or dependency on preparation, right? Chicken or the egg. Does grading participation make you more prepped for class, or are you participating more because you're more prepped for class, right? Which one came first, right? Are you not participating because you didn't prep, or are you prepping because you know you're gonna have to participate, right? So which one causes which? Flexibility to adjust questions and prompts to move to moments of class, right? You have to have flexibility as an instructor, right? You have this idea on what you're going to cover in your lecture and how it's going to go, but when you got 30 other people in front of you, right? Students are people too, right? They're going to have 30 different ways of seeing the same thing that you see. So you need to be able to move with the moment with them, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. And balancing honest feedback with discouragement, right? How do you tell someone they're wrong, right? Maybe, but not so much, right? So how do you, they are adults, right? And you need to tell them if their thinking's off wrong, so they don't keep following the wrong track, but you also don't want it to be discouragement if they're new and they're not used to getting feedback like that. How do you keep it constructive without, putting out their fire, so to speak? Okay, I'm gonna skip this because we're already out of time. So concession to benefit of graded participation outweighing the concept of participation points. So I had this debate for a long time, and I finally disagreed. Just went, Danielle, if you grade the participation points, they participate more, and that benefits them more than your ideal of you should be participating anyways, right? So let some other instructor break their heart when they go on to 4-year, right? And they don't get points for talking anymore. I keep mine approximately 10% of the grade. So if I have a 1,000-point class, there's 100 points of participation, which sounds crazy, but it's still only 10%, even if they realize that or not. But those bigger point values, especially if you're getting triple digits, like, what? Okay. I assess it twice per semester so that, one, we're not doing this constantly because it does take a little bit of time, but also it allows them to give each other feedback. So they're not giving the whole 100 points at once. They give each other feedback, and they can change their assessment, so to speak, or they can change their behaviors. And what I find is after the first assessment, participation skyrockets, because once they realize, oh yeah, people are noticing if I'm participating or not. And I think that moment that clicks in their head, their whole ballgame changes, right? That it's not just me and them in the room, that everyone else in the room knows whether or not they're participating as well, right? And I do this as their major extra credit opportunity, and that's kind of the crux of this method, is that you're putting extra credit also on the line. So how do I do it? I focus on team obligation to one another, right? You're not here participating to enlighten me, even though you learn a lot from my students. You're here to help each other, keep a team focused, keep an explanation of intention. Why do I do it this way? And a boardroom analogy. This is what always makes it click for them. If you participate in a boardroom and one person comes every day with a new idea and is running the whole thing, who should get the bonus at the end of the quarter? Everyone goes, oh, that's that person, And that clicks in their head that, oh, well, maybe extra credit is a bonus, right? So allows feedback mid-semester, encourages leaders in classrooms. This is always the hard thing too, is the leaders never get credit for being the leaders, right? We focus so much on the students that are struggling sometimes that I feel like the leaders don't get the encouragement to be like, yeah, you're doing great, keep pushing yourself harder, right? And so this is a way for them to get acknowledged, not just by their instructor, but more importantly by their peers, which is the #1 motivator for anyone, right, is recognition by your peers. And responsibility involvement in own education, that points are earned via participation, right? And opportunities are lost via excessive absences. So I incorporate my absence policy into this as well. I allow my students 3 days, no questions asked of missed days. And after that, it's 5 points off their participation points. Because even if you're participating 110% while you're here, if you're not here half the time, you're not participating. So day 1, I do the syllabus policy day. I explain the attendance policy. I explain what is participation, why do I care so much, how this is their extra credit, and then max points lost. So I don't make it this continuous 5 points every day till eternity. It's within the scope of how many points participation's worth. Mid-semester, we do the first assessment, and what you find is that students are more honest than they would be without the extra credit opportunity put in there, but they're generally softer than the last time, because I think the students realize, oh, I gave you feedback here, you didn't change your behavior, so now I'm going to actually be really honest. So you get a lot more honest feedback from students. So here's my form, the assessment form. This is really what you guys came here for. Pass this out, right? So your name, you the student, what group? I instead of calling them groups, I call them teams, right? That alone changes their whole mentality, right? Your teams. Number of members in your group. So however many members you are, and then times it by 10, and that creates poker chips, or what I call slices of pizza. If you imagine these slices of pizza, this pizza being all the total participation for the entire semester, how are you dividing that pizza? If everybody does their equal share, so here's a group 4, everyone did 25% of the participation, everyone would get 25%, that would be a 100% in the number of points I assigned to it, okay? But that's not what ever happens, right? Okay, so what I do, they have to divide these pizza points up, and a 10 is equivalent to 100% of whatever grade value I get it. So say it's a 20-point eval, if they get averages of 10s on these votes, they get 20 out of 20. But then there's this whole region over here, well, Danielle, what if it's above 10? That's all your extra credit. So if it's a 20-point, they can get up to 10 extra credit points, and all of a sudden there's skin in the game, right? It's easy to give everyone a 10 when there's no reason not to, right? But if they give someone an 11, that means that pizza piece came from somewhere else. So their total number of pizza credits have to add up to this, and all of a sudden they get really honest, right? So I do it that way, and then I turn this into a factor that I multiply by the number of points. Does that make sense? And I'm going really quick. So this is basically 100%. This is up to 150% of the value of the points for that score. Then what I do to make sure they're getting feedback is they have to cut these apart. I made them do it, so I don't have to do it. And on the back, they write why they gave the grade they gave, whether it's high grade or low grade. And I always make them do self-assessment every single time. They're always like, can I just skip myself? I say, go. That's the most important bit, right? I keep veto power, and I've only had to do veto power if they do the math incorrectly, or if somebody gives themselves a really, I had a student who was like the #1 student participator in the class, and he gave himself a 0 because he said, I don't need the points, they do. And I said, yeah, we're vetoing that. And I'm like, that's not the point. You're not here to give points and help each other. You're here to give me an honest assessment. So he understood that later. So then they cut these up. I at home have to take this. I use this as the top of a pile, and then I separate them into piles, and they get a little packet back, and it tells them what the votes were, not who voted what, and on the back is the feedback. And all of a sudden they realize, oh, people notice if I participate or not, and people notice they care whether or not I'm contributing to their experience. Okay? I changed that into this. This is how I figure out the points. So here you have your members, their votes, right? You get an average for their vote. You divide that by 10 and you get a factor times the number of points the grade's worth, and then you get a score. Okay, and so for mid-semester, I give them that. And this semester, I do it again. But then I count in how many absences did they have. With my 3 policy, how many of those are excessive? So then how many points did they lose for every excessive? And then I pull that out of their participation score. So the students that are participating a lot and carrying the class get recognition from their own peers. They don't even care about the extra credit because usually they already have A's anyways. They care that their group members notice them carrying the class, right? And the people who aren't doing so well, they get feedback and their awareness that your team is counting on you for something. It's not just me that cares, it's your team members as well. And they end up, this sounds like it would be ruthless, but they end up building really, really strong bonds because they feel accountable for each other, which ends up lasting their entire experience through their courses. So perception, some are annoyed at the concept of actually having to be accountable for their participation in this way, because they're used to just giving each other 10 out of 10 and calling it good, right? And having it just be this filler grade. So sometimes you get a little bit of once they figure out that there's actual, points to lose, right, when it comes to the extra credit. But a lot of students really like it. In fact, I've had students share it with other instructors, and then other instructors ask me how they do it. And so they like it because they're getting recognition for what they're doing and what they're bringing to class. I think I talked about more. And they take evaluation seriously. They learn that you are responsible. You are telling 10% of your fellow group members' grades. Now, granted, it's a voting system, so really they're getting like 2.5% of someone's grade, right? But that they've been working with these people all semester, and they have to be truthful because they owe it to them to be truthful. So, okay, so ideally you'd complete your peer participation evals, but at least you have them now with you. If you want to learn more, let me know if you want to learn more, and I'll share more. Sorry it went so long.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And Socrative, it always takes longer than I think it should take.